because we know things are not cheap nowadays. So we want to track how well you're utilizing those items. How well are you utilizing your mowers, your trucks, your machinery and equipment?
Cash flow is tricky because actually, especially in a seasonal company, sometimes growth or increasing volume could actually impact you even in a worse way when it comes to cash flow.
What I've seen is growth will kill you if you're not careful.
People get discouraged. Running a company could be hard. Stay consistent and staying at it, and over a long time, if you stay consistent, I think you'll see some good results.
You're listening to Landscape Business Growth Lab podcast. I'm your host, Ron McCabe, founder of Everbearing Services. On this podcast, I uncover the landscaping and outdoor living industry's best kept secrets. You'll hear exclusive interviews with industry innovators, discover cutting-edge strategies from the fastest-growing businesses in the green space. We're also going to explore game-changing technologies that are at the tip of the shears. This is where seasoned landscapers and those who are just breaking ground in the industry grow together. Let's roll out the green carpet. Thanks for listening. This is the Landscape Business Growth Lab podcast. I'm Ron McCabe with Everbearing Services. And today, I'm speaking with Joe and Carla Policastro, co-founders of CycleCPA. Joe and Carla and the CycleCPA team work with hundreds of green industry businesses nationwide, providing bookkeeping, fractional CFO, and tax services. They give owners the insights they need to make smart financial decisions and grow profits. Joe and Carla, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ron. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Where did CycleCPA come from, and why did you decide to focus on landscaping?
That's a good question. So like we touched upon earlier, husband-wife team here. I'm one of the co-founders and one of the CPAs at the company. And I started off my career at one of our local accounting firms here on Long Island. And we service any industry under the sun, bakeries, factories, landscaping. And because of that, we weren't really able to, as accountants, give good feedback to these business owners as far as how well they were doing in their business and interpreting their numbers and what that all means and giving them advice so that they can grow and reach their goals. But because we were in a Hispanic-based community, there were a lot of landscapers that were our clients naturally. And they would come in and talk with me about their recurring issues like the seasonality over here, in the Northeast, estimating, job costing. And, I became passionate about helping the landscapers specifically because they were just down to earth people. I liked talking to them and I saw the recurring issues there too. So I said, okay, there's an opportunity for me to use my accounting knowledge to help this demographic on a higher level. So after that, I went off to work at one of the larger CPA firms in the country. But I always knew I had that heart to help the landscaping industry with all of those recurring items. And not only that, but as an accountant, I tried to find ways that I can fill my cup, and helping others is really what my passion is. And if I'm just doing data entry work, it's pretty cool. I get to send you the profit and loss and stuff, but if I'm able to talk and connect and, help you see the numbers in a way you haven't or help you meet your goals, I think that's truly where the value is. And so thankfully, Joe had the same vision as I did, and we were able to, start CycleCPA with helping other business owners in this industry. And that being the front of mind is the advisory side of things.
One of the fastest growing economic segments in the U.S. is Hispanic business. And within the landscaping world, I know that the up-and-coming group is Hispanic-owned or Latin-owned business.
Exactly. And I think that, with I'm Hispanic, I'm originally from Ecuador. And so that's what drew me to that as well. And even if it's not, Hispanic-owned landscaping businesses, it's also first-time business owners is also a commonality along landscapers. And none of their family members know much about business and how to run a business or know the numbers. And so that also helped me connect with them as well.
There's not many types of businesses that I think symbolize just how possible the American dream is.
I agree.
Just to get started for many companies, It's not even like you need to make some huge investment into a building or some sort of manufacturing plant or something like that. This is something where people can get started if they have that drive, and whether it's getting a mower or learning how to install patio. That's a great part of business, which I'm sure you probably see as well, Ron.
My company's really focused on growing landscaping businesses, and that to me has been the most delightful thing. Sure, you've experienced the same thing where, you get a guy that has an idea and he struggles but gets through that first 50,000, which I think is the hardest. And then, over a few years builds it into a multi-million dollar business. And I think it's an amazing thing that we all get to watch. What services do you offer to help landscaping businesses grow?
Really starting from the bookkeeping. So many of our clients use a software like QuickBooks as an example. So handling all the categorizing transactions within a platform like that, reconciling the accounts, making sure that the month end close is done, so that they have financial statements each month. Also, because we work with a lot of green industry companies, we're able to compile a lot of that data and put that into our advisory meeting, where we can really help to be that financial perspective into certain decisions that the companies are looking to make. So whether they're looking to purchase equipment or trucks, or they're looking to increase pricing on their customer base, or add on another crew. That's more on the managerial accounting side, so that they can really, from a management perspective, operate their company well based on the numbers. And then you also have the tax side, so which we can help with as well, which is everything from the tax filing to also tax planning calls, where we could really help drive down that tax liability, be as proactive as possible with that. We can also help out with accounts payable, so paying the bills, coinciding that with cash management meetings. As you know, Ron, within this industry, sometimes between the seasonality and for those companies that do a lot of the install based work, at times cash flow could be tight. So helping to manage that and prioritize, okay, what bills should we be paying? What's in the sales pipeline? So doing that kind of forecasting, and then also budgeting help, that pretty much encompasses most of what we can help with.
So really a multifaceted approach and really helping your clients get through the growth process and be successful.
Yeah, trying to help them at whatever stage of business, they're in for the most part, startups, like you said, that could be hard to kind of just getting your business starting, establishing your clientele, but you still need the accounting work and the taxes done at the end of the year, right? And once you get a few employees on, you may worried about, okay, how am I gonna grow this thing, add another crew, add another truck, so those meetings come into play. And then maybe, you're looking for your general manager or your right-hand person, and at that point you're over a million or something like that. And now you really want to adhere to a budget, stick to a budget. You want to have those weekly cash flow, CFO level meetings where we're a little bit more involved. And then anything over that. So it's just, what are the pain points that business owners in this industry face in the certain stages of business where they're at, and how can we help you with those different scenarios, with those different situations, and be the partner you need along the way.
I know on my side, and again, I do something completely different to digital marketing. There's different unique pain points each size of the business is. And just kind of overall, what financial metrics should a landscaping business track when they're starting out and then also as they get bigger? What do they need to be doing so they're not flying blind?
I know, Joe, you probably have a few that you recommend, but I'll get started with like mine. I would say ones would be return on fixed assets. And I know that probably sounds like a foreign language to some of you, so let me break it down. Fixed assets, what that means is an accounting term for your machinery, trucks, and equipment, right? That you're going to use over time for more than 1 year. And so these are big purchases and investments that a landscape company needs to make, because we know things are not cheap nowadays. So we want to track how well you're utilizing those items. How well are you utilizing your mowers, your trucks, your machinery and equipment? So one KPI is return on fixed assets. Like, what is your return on all the mowers, trucks, and trailers that you have, right? Because is it producing well for you or is it not, right? And so that metric is going to give us a pulse on whether that return on those items are good for you. Because in the landscape industry, the model is, you have that machinery and equipment that you have to maintain, you have to buy as you scale, right? And so you want to make sure that you have a good pulse on that number because it's a big investment. So that would be one. And then another one would be fixed asset turnover. And what that measures is how well your machinery, equipment, mowers, trucks, trailers is producing revenue for you, right? Like, how efficiently are you able to produce revenue with the amount of assets that you have on hand? So again, that gives us a pulse on whether maybe are you marketing for the equipment that you have, or do you have something that's sitting idle, So I would say starting off with those two would be good, just because, again, those tend to lean more on the balance sheet side because they deal with that fixed asset amount. And so a lot of people don't know about those two KPIs, but super important for this industry.
One of the things too, as a company is getting started, making sure that the chart of accounts is set up to really help to facilitate accurate analysis of the numbers, right? And example of that is when we're looking at metrics like your gross margin. So that's what's left over after all your direct costs. So all the materials, if you're paying people to help perform the work, whether they're subcontractors or direct labor in the field, disposal costs. So it's not taking into account overhead costs yet. And that's a metric someone can really look at. Maybe the goal is 50%, right? So 50% of revenue is your gross margin target. So that gives you a good indication of not overall what the profitability of the company is, but specifically how well and how productive is the operations in the field. And the reason that it's important to have your chart of accounts and your accounting data organized in a way is because sometimes people don't separate that out, right? So they might have everything lumped into overhead costs or everything lumped into the direct costs. So it doesn't give you a true aspect of, okay, are we overhead heavy or are we a little bit high on the direct costs? Because then you can basically look at the overhead costs. Okay, maybe the goal is all of those back end administrative costs of the company, whether it's repairs and maintenance, utilities, maybe you're paying an admin person, all of those different costs, maybe 30% is the target. How is the company matching up? And then ultimately, what is left over after all your expenses is the net profit. If you're looking at the gross margin, again, that'll give you a good indication of how productive you are in the field. And then keeping a close eye on your overhead and being able to track that. And I think especially for a company that's just starting out, you don't really have past numbers to necessarily compare your pricing and your methodology to, as you're looking to get started in business. So I would try to call some of your competitors, try to get an idea of what is the pricing in your market. Because although you don't want to 100% go by that moving into the future as you grow your company, you want to base it on your numbers. That'll give you a baseline. And then as months go by, then you can have historical data to really compare and dial in to, okay, this is what the financials are actually showing us at the end of the period versus this is what we're pricing the jobs for.
This is a little nerdy on my part, but I really like the chart of accounts and the control it gives you as an owner. One of the things I like about the chart of accounts, and I think is really empowering for a business owner, is that while there's some industry guidelines on how you set them up, is you get the opportunity to participate and set the chart of accounts up how you need, to have a dashboard that really helps you track the heartbeat of your business.
Absolutely. And another example of that, Ron, is like we might see a lot in Facebook groups, right? Where people are like, oh, my profit is 40%. Well, what does that actually mean? Is that person actually accounting for their overhead costs? Or even if someone says, our labor costs, we're only operating at 20%. Are they including their office manager, their salespeople, right? So it's especially important when you are benchmarking, which is something that we do, Ron. And that way we know that we're ultimately comparing apples to apples. Because the whole point of it is you want to be able to go from all the way to the side of, okay, let's just look at our bank balance or our bank account and try to manage our company. And the goal is to go from something like that to as specific as possible where you can really dial in and say, no, actually, this is the exact metric that I need to improve within the company.
Right, right. Well, and if you don't have that, you can have some really nasty surprises.
Yeah. At the end of the year.
So looking at this whole picture, for someone just starting out their landscaping business, what kind of help do they need to grow that your company could provide?
From the financial perspective, I think just getting some of the fundamentals down, similar to kind of what we had touched on, Ron, getting a QuickBooks account set up, getting that LLC to protect it personally, getting some of that foundation. What we typically recommend is for them to put a lot of effort into the sales and marketing, which is really your area, Ron, because that's going to put them into the position that then there is something to really measure, right? In regard to data and, so because sometimes companies reach out to us and, they might not have any revenue coming in the door yet, right? And it's, so I think it's really prioritizing marketing because that's going to put them in a position where you can make a couple mistakes here and there as long as you have the sales coming in.
Right, right.
It's super important because even if you budget, as a company that's just starting out, especially a company just starting out, because traditionally cash flow is not going to be that good because you're investing into a lot of equipment, investing into things like market, right? So I think it's important to understand and kind of build out a budget, as you're getting started. Okay, what do I need personally to just exist or just to be able to survive in regard to the bills and different things that I need to pay for myself, and then building out a budget that you're going to be able to hit that, and most importantly, revisiting that each month. Not waiting until the end of the year, so then that way you can react based off of what's happening. You probably don't want to get too much into marketing. You probably want to hear more about the accounting side, but I think it's so important for companies, and I think companies don't invest enough in marketing when they're first getting going.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny. So we keep some guidelines as far as the investment. And once somebody is above a million, it could be as low as 5%. But if you're, in that first, like the first 200K, 50 to 200K is really pretty rough. And at that stage, the guys that are actually growing and really even up to 500K are spending, 10 to 15% of their revenue on marketing just because nobody knows who they are and they don't have an established business and things like that. And that's one thing we do is we track businesses. Essentially we have recipes for the different sizes that businesses are, or things we know to do. For you, like how do you support a business that's under 500K?
So typically we're taking on most of the accounting side of things, because they might have a CPA that's more tax based, right? But maybe they're just getting their tax return filed at the end of the year. So for a smaller company like that, typically we'll take on all the bookkeeping within the QuickBooks account, really ultimately to make sure that they have those monthly financials. And then adding on even kind of like a quarterly advisory meeting where we can dive into the numbers deeply. So that's typically what we recommend for a company that size is getting that monthly accounting done and then having that advisory meeting to kind of coincide with it.
To us, the next big milestone is hitting a million. And so once a landscaping business hits seven figures, what do they need to do? Like how do their needs typically change?
That's a good question. And like I said, I think it's a rough stage, a million, right? Because the quantity of administrative tasks starts piling up, right? And what we see, the major pain point is the overhead, tasks and staff. Because at this point, if you don't have efficient processes or procedures built up, like let's say your accounts receivable process, like you don't have a process for it. You don't have somebody calling your clients when they're late on payment, and now it's causing a major cash flow issue, or you're not invoicing on time, right? Maybe you do have that right hand person, that general manager and stuff like that, but the administrative size of things, like we see that gets a little bit tricky at that point. So what we tried to diagnose is not only field labor efficiency, but overhead labor efficiency, right? Like, who do you have staff that is not really generating revenue directly for you? And what are their tasks? What are they doing? How do you keep track of their task? What software are you utilizing to create efficiencies in that space, right? And how are you keeping your team accountable? So, at that point, we also create a budget, for our clients that we go over every single month. And really, the reason why we create a budget is because we want the business owner to be close to their numbers, right? And having a set goal for every month in terms of, okay, what are my sales going to be, my expenses, and my net profit? And us being able to review that with them every month. Like, here was the budgeted, here are the actuals, and here are the favorable and unfavorable variances, right? You did not hit your sales target, right? We can go in and see, okay, like, was it because, you know, the marketing was not there, right? Were we not spending enough on marketing? Or is it because, like, we worked overtime on a certain job and it just took over our whole schedule for the month or whatever it is, right? Like, why is it that we didn't hit that sales target? So we talk through with the client. Obviously, the client has a more like a closer pulse on exactly what happened during the month. And sometimes it was like, well, we're missing a few invoices because now we're running behind on like invoicing people. So we did have that money. We just didn't create the invoices. So, it could be lots of different kinds of scenarios of why we didn't hit that sales target, right? And then we go through the cost of goods sold. So field labor cost, um, field labor hours, subcontractor costs, what was the projected, why did we meet that or not? And then the overhead costs tend to stay fixed, but if there's some sort of like repair that happened out of nowhere this month, like we needed to change the tires on something or whatever it is, we talk through that as well. Business owners tend to use the budget at this point, also for goal setting and having their like sales people involved as well. Like, okay, this is our target for this month. Like, what do we need to do to get these sales numbers in, right? And so they can create some sort of incentive plan to keep them on track. Some people even get their staff involved in the expense tracking, in the budget as well. So just depends. I think, at that point you're maybe practicing open book management that works for some companies, and depending on what the incentives are for those that are involved. Um, but yeah, that's one of the things that we do more at that point in time, Ron.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And kind of what I've seen from the outside is as the transaction volume goes up, these kind of issues and mistakes start to crop up. At around a million especially, there's kind of constraints of resources, but at the same time, everything's speeding up. And so it seems like, the services you're providing could really help somebody stay out of trouble and kind of meet their goals and sales targets.
It's a way to kind of extend out the capacity without having to hire a full-time person, which is a very common thing that we come across for companies maybe between the $1 to $5 million range. Either the business owner themselves or the office manager is handling some of the bookkeeping or trying to, and then all of a sudden now we can maintain a good amount of that, where then they can use up more of their time with some other aspects of the company. That is a very common thing, Ron. And the other thing too, it's, similar to like what you said, as the company grows and they have more transactions, one would think that, oh, well, cash flow is going to get better because I'm going to double the company, I'm going to get more sales in the door. But in reality, cash flow is tricky because actually, especially in a seasonal company, sometimes growth or increasing volume could actually impact you even in a worse way when it comes to cash flow.
What I've seen is growth will kill you if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Like, growth consumes a lot of cash and these issues kind of come up, and growth is a good thing, but it's also got challenges.
Yeah. And that $5,000 that you had to come up in the slow season this year may be a lot more if you double the company, but you didn't make as much net profit going for next
Right.
year. again, that's why it's important to look at your numbers, especially, sitting in, the end of summer here, and having a realization and understanding, wow, we actually budgeted for 2 million this year, but we're only at 1.2, and I don't think we're going to get there. I think we're going to be closer to 1.6. Now, what does that mean to some of the fixed costs that the company is experiencing? And instead of adjusting it in December when it's too late, now is the time to make those adjustments. Okay, can we utilize maybe some more subcontractors that we can dial back a little bit more, in the off season? Should we consider renting something right now instead of making a big investment, cash wise? The more proactive people can be, uh, the better for sure when it comes to cash flow.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I don't know what the points are. I'm hoping you can help me out on this, but I guess, you know, above a million, and I don't know if it's a 2 or 3 or 5, but where does your value expand? How does your services change as those companies grow?
Yeah, as they grow, we tend to get more involved, you know. As companies grow, they say, you know what, I'm going to hire an in-house bookkeeper. They're going to keep up with my transactions daily, reconciliations. I just want you to focus on like job costing, our CFO level meetings, and the budgeting aspect. And that becomes part of our role, right? Because that's what, at that point they don't have the cash to hire a CFO, part-time or full-time, $150,000 salary a year or so, right? Companies that size tend to leverage us for the higher level CFO level service, and then possibly keeping bookkeeping in-house. But there are some people that, have our bookkeeping. Where people get the most values are our weekly cash flow meetings, because what we do is we diagnose like the sales that are going to come through. If people have progress payments, like you're going to get like $10,000 down from a project that you're going to do this week. How much are we expected to collect from AR this week? This is the cash projection for this week of the money that's coming in, right? And we go into your CRM, whether it's like LMN or, whatever CRM you're using, to see all the money that is projected to come in this week, next week, and so on. We build out a forecast, and then we are also projecting out the expenses. And then at the end of our projection at each week, we have, okay, this is going to be the balance in your bank account, projected balance in your bank account. And so at that capacity, we also take care of like payroll transfers. Okay, we're going to need 40,000 for payroll this week. We're going to transfer that into the payroll account. Let's say that you're hitting a cash flow crunch, which is totally normal at this stage, right? Because you're growing. You may be in a cash flow constraint. A lot of the analysis that we do is, okay, which vendors are going to get grumpy at us if we don't pay them up right now? Okay, so these become the priority vendors, right? Let's get them paid. We need the money for payroll. And which one of these credit cards have the highest interest rate? They're going to get paid, right? And this is how much is going towards everybody's payment. This is how much we have coming in. And so we're able to give clients like that insight of, okay, this is what the cash flow is looking like. This is what we should prioritize. This is where our time is best spent. Now, there may be other companies, right, that don't have cash flow issues. The strategy becomes a little bit different. It becomes, okay, I want to open up a new location. How much in startup cost do I need to open up a new location? I want to buy a building. In those scenarios where you do have a cash influx, we're more doing scenario planning, right? If you were to open up a location here, or if you were to start up 2 new crews, this is how much it's going to be, and this is what the projected profitability of that would be. So, right, so there's different goals, right, for different companies, and our week to week, meetings and strategy sessions will be tailored to that.
And the value that we provide when we handle predominantly most of the accounting functions. Now, within that, basically, a lot of the value becomes being able to leverage our expertise within the industry, based on the client data, but also internally, our team in our weekly meetings, we're talking about, okay, how can we better help our clients? What are we seeing our clients experience? What are ways that people are seeing clients manage cash flow well going into the winter, right? So those are all conversations that we're having. So leveraging it from that perspective, but as a company grows, instead of being in a position where you need to, as a landscape business owner, maybe not with an accounting degree or an accounting background, trying to find a controller or accounting manager level person while not having the expertise yourself could be difficult when it comes to hiring that person. The other side of that too is what happens if that person leaves? Or what happens if even just the bookkeeper leaves or your office manager leaves? What is that opportunity cost of you as a landscape business owner, instead of going out and doing sales and generating business, to then trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to replace this account? And then the other side of it too, not having to pay a full-time controller and CFO, which I think a lot of people talk about. I think in professional services, it's kind of the more salesy way to kind of think about outsourced services, where it's, oh, you don't have to pay a full-time person. The other side of it, I think that is a benefit. So pairing that alongside, I think what isn't talked about a lot is, at the end of the day, it's our responsibility as the accounting firm to make sure that we have competent people, and maybe our employees leave one day. It's our responsibility to make sure that we find another accountant internally here that will handle them well and will pick up right from when they left off, while that landscaping business owner can continue doing what he could do to generate and grow the business. So, and Ron, I think you can look at marketing in a very similar way too.
Yeah, no, we do. We actually have kind of internal recipes for different situations, and the needs of somebody under 500K is very different than somebody over a million, and kind of that, 2 to 5 things change again. One question I had for you that just kind of occurred to me. So one benefit my company has is because we only deal with landscaping businesses, we've got this national perspective, and, I think we all work on pattern recognition. How has it helped your company to just focus on landscaping, and how does that help you do a better job?
Starting from the actual operational perspective of that, I think we're actually a lot more efficient compared to another firm that operates and serves all different types of companies. For an accountant to go from an advisory meeting, from talking to a restaurant owner and then a law firm and then to a landscaping company, it's just difficult to be up to date on just the strategies, especially with the intricacies within the green industry.
Cycle CPs, like, when we hire accountants, like, they're wanting to join our team because they want to be specialized in a specific industry, and whether it was, like, maybe a family member of theirs that was in the landscape industry, or they're just drawn to this in their own way, like, they want to help the business owner too, so they're aligned in that, and we're able to get them trained up in that skill set, through, our landscaping accountant, training programs and stuff like that. So from that perspective, it's been super fulfilling, to be able to help others, meet their goals professionally too.
Working within one industry and being specialized, and I think you can even look at this from a landscaping business owner perspective too. Someone that specializes in only doing maybe hardscape work, they're gonna be a lot more efficient at performing that, and probably they're gonna be able to make higher profits bidding the same price as another competitor that's trying to do all different types of things and is maybe not too good at anything in general. So I think ultimately our goal with this is provide better value, but even at a potentially lower or the same cost as another accounting firm, because we are specialized. That's really our goal.
Efficiencies, and also being able to provide better assistance.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been great, kind of wrapping this up and talking about things. What is the top insight you would share with someone who wants their landscaping business to grow? Like, what's the top piece of advice you would give them?
More from a bird's eye view, Ron. And I was talking to someone about this the other day. He was talking about someone that is 8 or 9 years ahead of him. Now he's already making, a lot of money and stuff like that. And I told him, I said, listen, if you just continue on your path and what you're doing in 7 to 8 years, you're going to surpass that. You can do it just to stay consistent. You don't need to go out there and hit a home run every single at bat. Just hit those singles and those doubles and get those walks. And over time, you're going to be in a good position. But oftentimes, I think people get discouraged. Running a company could be hard. And over a long time, if you stay consistent, I think you'll see some good results.
Good. I think that's pretty good advice. What's the best way for people to reach you?
So they can email us at joep@cyclecpa.com or they can visit our website, cyclecpa.com.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Landscape Business Growth Lab podcast. Big thank you, Joe and Carla, for sharing your insights. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. That's a wrap on today's episode of Landscape Business Growth Lab podcast. I hope you picked up some fresh ideas to help your business grow. Remember, growth doesn't happen overnight. It takes the right tools, strategies, and consistent cultivation. If you found value in today's show, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. Share this episode with a fellow green industry professional who's ready to level up. For more resources, show notes, and exclusive content, visit us at landscapebusinessgrowthlab.com. And if you want to connect directly, you can find me at Everbearing Services. Until next time, I'm Ron McCabe, reminding you to keep your tools sharp and your mindset sharper. Now get out there and grow something great.